I'm Rohit Bhargava, and you're watching Behind the Brand.
Hi, I'm Bryan Elliott. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Brand. Today I'm here with trend curator and Wall Street Journal bestselling author Rohit Bhargava, who's just written a new book called Non-Obvious. Rohit, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bryan. Great to be back.
Yeah. So you've written this new book, Non-Obvious. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, the book is sort of a culmination of 5 years of research that I've been doing around trends, business trends. And it's my attempt to encourage people to think a little bit differently, to be more observant of the world around them, and just to learn how to see patterns in the different things that they encounter all the time and then apply them to their business.
What kind of research did you do to write this book? Who did you talk to?
You know, I'm lucky. I get to go to a lot of events every year, and I hear amazing speakers. I share the stage with many of them, and I get to get a lot of books for free, as any author does. Once you become an author, people send you stuff. And so I have a lot of inputs. And so really what I do throughout the years, I curate all of those, and I literally have a folder that ends up probably about that thick, full of paper at the end of the year, and that's sort of what I dig through every year to produce an annual trend report with 15 trends that I think are going to change business in the next year.
Let's talk about some of the top 15 trends for this year.
Yeah. So this year was fascinating, as it sort of has been as I've evolved the report. And so this year, the 15 trends kind of break down into 5 categories. So I've got marketing and social media, media and entertainment, consumer behavior, technology and design, and one more, which of course I'm not going to remember now. But basically there's 3 trends in each category. And then I kind of dig into like the trend, some examples of it, and then how you can apply it to your business. So the one that I actually opened the book with is something I called Everyday Stardom. And it was kind of based on the idea that now we as individuals are used to being treated and have opportunities to become superstars. So it's everything from like the YouTube stars who've got like, you know, channels on how to put up makeup, and now they're like on billboards in Times Square, like Michelle Phan, through to Disney's Magic Band, and how like that Magic Band allows Disney to recognize you when you're in the theme park, even to the point of like greeting you by name, like, hey Bryan, like Mickey Mouse can walk up to you now and say, hey Bryan, how are you? Yeah. Which is slightly creepy, but also kind of cool. And that's possible. So it's like all of these different pieces pointing to the fact that we are the superstars. We're the stars of the show. And so now if you're a brand, if you're a retail brand, if you're a brand that's trying to create an experience for a customer, well, what does that mean for you in terms of how you have to treat the customer now to be the star of the show?
Yeah, so what does it mean? What are the implications?
Well, so the first thing is you have to be able to personalize the experience, right? Saying, dear customer, when you open an email isn't enough anymore, because they know that you have the ability, the ability to address them personally exists. And if you don't use it, then it's apparent that you don't care enough to use it, right? So I think part of it is personalizing on a larger scale and being able to treat customers like individuals. The second part of that, obviously, is customizing to the point of segmentation, right? So you know that these types of customers that you have like this, those types of customers like that. Part of it is an email thing, right? Because you can segment an email list. But the other part is just, you know, you can't say, well, somebody's a customer, period. Right. You have to actually be able to group them into what they care about.
So who are some of the companies that are doing personalization well?
Well, I think ultimately one of the spaces, I think it's actually a more interesting question to ask, like what space is doing it well, right? And I think if you look at the travel space in general, there's been a lot of turnover and movement towards this idea of, look, we've got to segment these customers and what they care about differently than other customers. We've got to treat them differently based on their interests and what they care about. We've got to treat them differently if they're a business traveler versus a leisure traveler. Sometimes they're going with their family, sometimes they're not. How do we treat them differently in each one of those situations? So that's just exciting stuff. I mean, because you're now getting to be more sophisticated, and you actually have the tools to be able to do that. And this is not about like investing hundreds of thousands of dollars to create some sort of like magical big data cloud thing, right? This is just about using the information that you've got and being smarter. Okay, gotcha. So how about segmentation?
Yeah, so segmentation is interesting because when you start to think, like if you get really into the weeds, like the dumbest way we used to segment, right? And I'm a marketing guy, so I could say this. Like the dumbest way we used to segment is we'd say, we're going to do it by demographic. So you are a male between 30 and 40 years old, and you are married, and you live in this region, therefore you care about these things.
which is completely idiotic because that says that every male that you know around your region of your age is interested in the same thing, which we all know in reality is totally wrong. But it was the best we had. And now I think we're getting to the point where we can combine that with, okay, somebody's interested in this, even if it's an unexpected interest. And because they're interested in that and it's an unexpected interest, we can target them based on what they really care about instead of just what demographic they have, what drop-down they fit in our form that we used to collect.
So what is the non-obvious title about? Like, break that down for me.
Yeah, non-obvious was a little bit out of frustration, I think, because at the end of every year, we see a lot of trend reports. The cover of Entrepreneur magazine had trends to watch for 2015 earlier this year. And if you started reading that, a trend, here's an example of a trend that they would put in there, 3D printing, right? That's not a trend. That's one thing that you can do now that exists, right? But the trend is something that's behavioral, right? To me, the way I describe and define a trend is that it's an observation about the accelerating present. So it's something that's already happening, but it's accelerating. And if you can observe it, then you can figure out how to actually use it in your business. So part of the challenge is a lot of these trends that are out there, they just, they're obvious, right? Hence the non-obvious tag. The other thing is they're self-serving, right? So if I have a company and I sell hammers and I declare 2015 the year of hammers, it's pretty obvious I'm doing that because I want to sell more hammers, right? It's not because it's necessarily true. It's just I'm trying to push my own thing. And I think people see through that too. So,
do you think this whole headline grabbing, link bait thing is a trend? So, BuzzFeed is the first to start this thing, right? Top 10 lists, and now we're seeing, everyone from New York Times to every other business magazine and beyond follow this. What I think is a trend. Weigh in on that.
Yeah, one of my trends actually kind of talks about that, and I called it glanceable content. And so this is a perfect example, right? Because what you'll see in some of these trend roundups is they'll say BuzzFeed is the trend, right? Or sensational headlines is the trend. But as I started doing research, one of the things that I found is, first of all, human attention spans are shrinking, right? You've probably seen some of the studies, humans have a lower attention span than a whole goldfish now. So all these sensational, it's again, another sensational headline, right? But what it means is you have less time to capture someone's interest, right? Things have to be glanceable, even to the point where there's a bunch of engineers studying glance time in a car dashboard, right? So how quickly can you read the dashboard while you're driving from a safety point of view? So, you take the car safety thing, which is, in theory, completely unrelated to the BuzzFeed headline thing. But if you start to put these two things together, you say, well, now anything that we consume has to be glanceable to the point where we understand, okay, do I get it? Do I want to dig further into it? Or did I kind of already get it and I'm done? And so what that means from a content point of view is, yeah, it's a lot harder to capture our attention. And so the reaction from the New York Times or any of these guys is to follow the BuzzFeed model. But actually, we are getting better at filtering out the things we don't want to spend time with, but we do spend time with the things we do care about, right? So if you think about the flip side of that, if you make your headlines and your content glanceable enough that people can understand whether it's for them or not, then there's many more ways that they can save it and actually read it later. And I don't know about you, but I will take the time to read a long, beautifully written article about something that I'm interested in, but I'll do it on my own time.
For sure, and that's why I love what we're doing here, is because most of the people who are watching this will see it on the web, and they can go and watch it in their jammies, or fast forward, rewind, watch it again 10 times.
And watch it in a time-shifted way. I mean, they may be watching it, several years after we are talking.
That's right, that's right. What I want to know, too, is how are these companies getting the information that they're getting in order to come up with their hypothesis? So Facebook, for example, there's a ton of data there, and we know how we can advertise on Facebook and reach people on Facebook. But outside of Facebook, how are companies like travel industry, for example, how are they getting all this information about us to personalize or segment?
There's really only two ways to get information, I think, from someone. You either collect it based on their activity because they're somehow logged in, or you're watching them, or you ask them. And I think that companies are getting better at doing both of those things.
That's what I want to ask you too. It's how are companies getting better at doing that? Because, you know, no one wants to take the time. I mean, I get asked all the time to stick around on a phone call and take a survey. No. Or, you know, fill out some form after I've done a website. I'm not doing that either.
Yeah, but you know, it's interesting because the same person that won't do that will write a 4-paragraph recommendation for a restaurant they loved on their own Facebook page, right? Which is never something they would share with the company, but they'll share it with their friends and family because they had a great experience, or a negative experience, and then they'll share the same thing, right? So we're sharing the things that we do because we care about them, right? And one of the biggest misconceptions, right, in social media, but also in marketing, is that the opposite of love is hate. Which it never was, right? The opposite of love is indifference. Yeah, they just don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they have to care to hate, right? And, you know, because, you know, if I don't care, that's the opposite, right? And that's the dangerous situation because nobody cares about you. So I think what it comes down to for companies and the way that they're collecting this information, to your question, is, yeah, they're getting smarter about tracking what it is that you do, because we sort of romantically forget how the web works, right? And I say romantically, we kind of imagine, oh, well, I went for one website, then I closed my browser, then I went to a different website, so they're not related. Meanwhile,
Right.
You're logged into Google the whole time.
Right.
All of your searches are tracked through
Right.
that. All of the ads are served. And so like it requires us as consumers to be a little bit more sophisticated, right? Because I actually wrote a only half joking blog post about something that I called adverse stalking, which was basically advertising stalking you, which is kind of based on this idea of retargeting, because I went online and I made the mistake of being logged into Google and I was going to a formal event and I looked for a bow tie. And I'm not a bow tie kind of guy, I don't wear bow ties very often, but you know, if you're going to a tuxedo type of event, you need one. So I went online and I searched for one, and of course, typical guy, I was looking on a Wednesday and I had to go to this event on Saturday, so I didn't have enough time to get it shipped anyway. So on Thursday or Friday, I ended up going to a physical store, I bought a bow tie. Then for 4 weeks after that, all the bow tie ads started stalking me, saying, hey, you want to get a bow tie? Gotcha. Now, I already bought one. I'm not in the market for one. I'm never going to click on any of those ads. But my online searches said to the company via the data that I'm in the market for a bow tie, and so they're serving me ads for bow ties, right? And that's the disconnect that we get right now. So we collect the information, and we have all this big data, but we're doing stupid things with it. And that's big company or small company.
Let's change gears for a second. So you're not just an author, you also are a teacher at Georgetown, and you're an entrepreneur. You got your own business, you're starting your own thing. Kind of look in the camera over my shoulder, and you know, a lot of people watch the show are entrepreneurs. Talk to them for a minute and kind of give some of the best advice that you can think of. Some of the best advice that maybe you've received, and maybe something from experience, and impart some words of wisdom.
Okay, yeah, I'll do my best. So I think if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking at starting your own business, one of the things that was most valuable for me was to take enough time to figure out what I absolutely, under no circumstances, would do again. Because I think part of being an entrepreneur is leaving something else behind, and so you know what you hate. And I knew what I hated, and what I hated was the hourly grind of doing consulting work in an ad agency. I just hated that. And so I knew when I started my own business I was never going to do that again. And that really helped me focus on what I was going to do. So know what you hate and then rule it out for ever doing it again. That is really valuable for me.
What's the best financial advice you've ever received?
The best financial advice? I would say spend money. And I don't mean small amounts of money. I mean spend large amounts of money on and make big bets. I thought when I started my business that, you know, and also like being Indian, like we were going to save the money, right? And I know how to do a lot of, I know how to use Photoshop. I know about branding. So of course I created my own logo. I created my own website. I hand coded that. I mean, I used a theme and stuff on WordPress, but you know, I know how to do that stuff. And so I overestimated how valuable it was for me to do things myself in order to save the money. And that was basically my first year of business. I did that. And then I had this kind of awakening and something clicked in me and I said, you know what? First of all, it's not that great because I slapped it together myself and I'm not as good at these things as I think I am. It's not my core sweet spot, right? Otherwise I'd be building websites and doing logos for other people. But that's not what I do because I'm not that great at it. So why should I do it for myself? And in my second year of business, I realized that the more I spent to get professionals working on things, the more I spent to be at exclusive events and network with the right people, the more it came back to my business. And I just recently kind of did the financial returns and everything on the first year versus the second year. And then the first year of my business, probably spent less than $5,000 on various services and things like that. In the second year of my business, I spent almost $60,000. So that's like a order of magnitude more. But what I got for that was huge in terms of being able to have the brand that I wanted, make the connections that I wanted, be in the places that actually mattered. And so like once I flipped that mental picture to say, look, it's not about saving the money, it's about spending it valuably, not spending it frivolously, right? But spending it valuably, then it actually makes a difference.
Brilliant, love that. What would you say to the readers who pick up your book for the first time? What is it? Like, if you could just summarize it, like highlight the executive summary for it, highlight the most important points. What do you want to tell the readers who read that book?
I would tell a reader of any of my books the exact same thing, which is I'm not technically I am a professor, but I'm not a professor when it comes to writing. I write in human language. I try and get as close to it would be like if we were having a conversation together. So I'll tell you stories, I'll write in human language. I don't use needlessly big words. I try and make my writing approachable. So the first thing I would tell people is, look, I'm just trying to get the best of what I've learned and what I've researched and what I've found onto the paper so that it's an entertaining read and it's an entertaining business book. The second thing is I actually love the writing process, and it's amazing to me, as a writer and also now as like a founder of a publishing company, how many people publish books but hate writing, right? I mean, it would be kind of like becoming a professional football player and hating football. Like it just, in no other space does that happen. But in books, people are like, yeah, I have the idea, but I hate the writing, so I'm just going to get somebody to do that for me. And I'm an English major. Like I love the writing. I've written plays, I've written poems, I've written all kinds of stuff. And the writing is exciting for me. And I think that when I read books now, and maybe it's just because I read so many and I have access to so many, I can tell. I can totally tell which books were written by someone else or not, or kind of phoned in, and which ones the writer really cared about the writing. So the other thing I would tell a reader of my books is I really care about the writing, and hopefully that comes through in the books.
What do you think blocks most entrepreneurs from being successful? What do you think, what's the tipping point? What's the make or break, the secret sauce? Where do most people get stuck, and what's the formula for success?
Tough question. I'm not sure I've cracked the formula for success, but I think having something, I'm a big fan of what in marketing I started calling something going micro-viral. And micro-viral is, when you post something on Facebook and it doesn't get 500 likes, but it gets 5 likes in 10 seconds, right? Which means everybody who saw it immediately had to click like. Now, that's just a social media example. It's not a macro thing. But the idea behind that is when you see something that starts to have traction, and you know in your gut that it has traction because the earliest result you saw of it was positive, double down on that thing and do more of it, right? And I think that is what holds entrepreneurs back sometimes, that they don't trust that instinct and then double down on it and just do it. Like when I was thinking about as an entrepreneur, I'd already started my consulting business. I was doing, really, really well with that business. And then I created an entire entity to be able to publish my own book in terms of all of the aspects of publishing. And I talked to 2 other authors about what I'd created, and they both loved it and said, man, if this existed, I would publish with that. And that was a sample size of 2 people. And I said, okay, I'm starting this business. And I started the publishing company based on that. That was it.
All right, we've been spending a little time with best-selling author Rohit Bhargava. Rohit, thanks for being on.